got, I actually have an answering machine on my landline, and it's broken. So it goes to, it asks people to enter the PIN.
Oh no.
But it's only robots calling it. So yeah, we've entered a brave new world.
The robots are calling the robots.
Yeah.
They're like, hey, do you know this guy's credit card number? No, do you? Maybe. Let's just try a bunch and see what happens.
Oh gosh. None of this stuff ever works right. At some point in the past, somebody said, what would be awesome is if I could talk to somebody across the country, and look what we've generated in the meantime. Oh, there's Robert again. Robert, stop following me around, buddy.
Oh, sorry, I'm stuck again.
Hey man, you got a new certification.
Yes,
I had
did.
no idea you could get certified in that.
They introduced the certification in April, so it's fairly new.
Good for you, man. What was it? HashiCorp?
HashiCorp, Terraform.
Oh, nice.
So
good for you, man. That's awesome.
Yeah,
I don't know if you saw it, but I got my AWS Architect Associate. I got that taken care of.
Oh.
And that was much harder than I thought it would be.
How long did you study for it? Because I'm thinking of taking that one.
What I did is there's a Udemy course taught by Stefan. I'm drawing a blank on his name, but I'll put it on our Meetup link.
Okay.
There's a Udemy course. He teaches it. It's got some hands-on stuff on there. He's got a couple of demo tests. And so, the thing is 24 hours long if you watch the entire thing, but it takes forever to get through it because if you do all of the stuff with it. But I did that, and then I studied. Well, I've been using AWS since 2016. So I studied a little bit outside of that and took the test and passed by the skin of my teeth. But by golly, I got it. I got it taken care of. So I would think, get through the course, take one of the prep exams, pay for one of the other prep exams, and just make sure that you follow up on each of the things that they say. Well, this is why you missed it or whatever. And
right.
Yeah, give it a shot. But it was much harder than I thought it'd be. So there's some points there, that AWS makes it that difficult. I highly recommend it. Now I'm going for the regular architect one. They say it's pretty difficult. Okay, well, it looks like we've got a pretty good gathering here. So let's go ahead and get rolling. Today is going to be a little bit of it's going to be a test. I'm not sure how this is going to turn out. Got my fingers crossed that it's going to work well. This particular demo that I'm trying to recreate was from the 2018 re:Event conference, and it involves the CDK. It involves CloudFormation, of course, but they're talking about particularly the concept of CDA constructs and how that works. And they wind up using that along with the Twitter API to generate a very cool demo. And so this particular demo that I put together, I got to a certain point, like within sight of the finish line on it, and I couldn't get it to work. And then followed 2 months of just pain trying to get the thing taken care of and get it done. And boy, you learn a lot when things go sideways. And I tried to capture those as much as I could, and I'll bring up those points that I figured out. Okay, this went wrong and that went wrong. But in the meantime, like I said, I'm not sure how this is going to turn out. It could be the shortest DevOps meetup in the world as I go running screaming from the room because I can't figure out what went wrong. But, we're going to give it a shot. And I hope that everybody on call appreciates just being bold, doing something a little different. Usually for the summer months on meetups, it's hard to get a quorum. Let's put it that way. Everybody's distracted, but of course, this is not like any summer we've had in the past. So we're going to see what happens with this one, and hopefully this will be a fantastic debut for me. Okay, so all of that being said, let's jump right in here. Oh yeah, before that, let me explain what the DevOps Meetup is. For those of you who are new, thank you for attending. The DevOps Meetup is about community as much as anything else. What I realized in 2016 was that the cloud was getting away from me and that there was a lot out there to learn. And after jumping in and learning a couple things, I realized, my gosh, this is just moving so fast. There's so much to know. There's too much to know. I can't do it all. And I thought, boy, wouldn't it be cool to have a community where we got together, talked about what we were seeing, talked about what we were doing, just got to know other like-minded professionals so that we could, well, if I don't know how to do AWS CDK, well, maybe somebody in the Houston DevOps Meetup does. If I don't know how to do Ansible or something like that, maybe somebody's got a presentation there. So it's about that network. It's about creating that community of developers that we can feed each other, and iron will sharpen iron. And ultimately, guys, we have some enormous challenges to solve in the world. And I look at Houston. I love Houston. I'm actually from Pittsburgh originally, but I got to Houston as fast as I could. And I think it's a great town. There's a lot of fantastic developers, a lot of great professionals. And we're trying to develop that community where we can all just kind of tap the strengths of one another and create something special. Because like I said, we've got enormous challenges out there. And that's what Houston does, is they fix things. So that's what the Houston DevOps Meetup is. So today, let's see if I can figure out how to share my screen. Where? There it is. Okay, let's see if I can get the right one here.
We believe in you.
Yeah. Can you see? Can you see Zoom? Does everybody see that Zoom screen there?
Yes, sir.
It's a Zoom browser window.
Yes.
Yeah, fantastic. Okay, cool. So I've got this fancy PowerPoint that I put together, because you know you can't do this stuff without a PowerPoint. Now, the first thing you need to know when you're doing this, got some prerequisites. In my case, I'm running on a Windows machine. This, of course, is not my preferred mode. I'd love to be working on Mac, but in my current role as a director of architecture at AWS, I have to work on a Windows machine. So I'm trying to, make sure I can do stuff there. So the first thing you want to do is install Visual Studio Code. You want to install Git, install the AWS CLI. I recommend version 2, but I think you can do the same thing with version 1. There's a couple versions there. You'll need to install Node, let it install Chocolatey as I have there on there. You'll need to install the AWS CDK. And by the way, I'll post these slides online if anybody's interested. And then you install the AWS Toolkit Visual Studio Code extension so that you get the tooltips as you're in Visual Studio Code. And of course, you need access to an AWS account. So once you have all those prerequisites in place, we can blaze forward. Now, let me explain what we're going to be doing here, or what we're going to try to do. You have, of course, code. So we're all the way over here, and we're going to take code, and we're going to put it into Visual Studio Code, right? Visual Studio Code is going to use the CDK to generate what amounts to a nice big YAML file, and that YAML file defines the stack. It defines a CloudFormation stack. And this is, of course, a cloud. We're going to the internet here, so we're going to load the YAML into our AWS CloudFormation, and that's going to generate various things like these symbols. If you're not familiar with them, the top one here, the orange one is a Lambda, the green one is an S3 bucket. You've got simple notification service is one of those pink ones, and the other one, simple queue service. I can't remember which is which, but you get the point. This CloudFormation template defines a variety of resources that are going to be part of this stack that you create in your code. We're talking about infrastructure as code. What the CDK does is you put your code into the window and you type what you want, and the CDK is smart enough to know, okay, well, yeah, you said you want a table, so I will create this YAML file and I will define how that table looks. And it does some super neat stuff. The thing that is so powerful about the CDK is that as anybody who's been in AWS for any amount of time, one of the most difficult things is the IAM module. The IAM module is the Identity and Access Management. Oh my gosh, that is complicated stuff. And so the the CDK knows the IAM module. And so when it creates these items, for instance, it'll create you'll tell it, okay, I want a table and I want this queue and I want this queue to use this Lambda function to save things to this table. Well, the CDK knows the minimum amount of permissions required for each of those functions, and it will create a specific IAM role for that specific Lambda function that only has permissions to that specific table, and it can only read or it can only write. And this is incredibly useful because knowing all that stuff can be challenging, but the CDK knows it for you. So I found it to be something of a godsend, and it's been just a great ride as I'm trying to learn the CDK and get to infrastructure as code to make things faster, to make things more. We want to get to a point where we as developers are empowered, and so there's nothing more powerful than coming up with an idea and being able to just spin something up in the cloud. And so you put your code in, like. You put your code in Visual Studio Code. There's a command line call that you CDK deploy, and the CDK looks at your code, generates that file, puts it up in AWS, and bang, you've got this set of items and resources up there running. You can then, once everything is done, you can type CDK destroy, and it pulls it all down. Now, it leaves the persistence up there. If you have S3 buckets, if you have databases or any kind of persistence layer, it's going to leave that stuff. But it takes down the compute, right? It takes down the Lambda functions. It takes down the queues. It takes down notification services. So it takes the events and stuff like that. It takes that out of there, but it keeps the persistence, which is cool because we all know that the most expensive thing in cloud is not storage. It's the compute and the RAM. So anyway, all that being said, there is an AWS construct library. This link here shows you what you need to do as far as if you want to use this construct, if you want to use this item, if you want to spin up a queue, if you want to spin up a Lambda function, these are the things you need to do. Another cool thing about the CDK as you're using it that you should know is that what AWS did is it made it so that you didn't have to put a whole lot of items on anything you're creating. It makes you do the absolute minimum in order to get something up there, and it kind of just fills in the gaps. Because let's face it, if you're putting together an S3 bucket, you provide the name, but AWS will lock the thing down so that no one can get to it. And if it does those kind of things for you, it can create an environment where you can develop and deploy fast and not have to, expose things that you didn't want to expose. Okay, so all that being said, let's go to our command window and let's get started here. This is the wreckage of previous CDK destroy here, and I'm going to create a directory. I have here, there it is. I have my how-to demo. I'll just be running through all this kind of stuff here. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to create a directory, and we're going to run this CDK init -l TypeScript. So I am a miserable typer, so hang in there with me. CDK 0. So what that does is it's going to, in this folder, create a CDK project that we will then open in Visual Studio Code. Okay, fantastic. So if I go to Visual Studio Code, okay, and I am open and I'm running. Next thing. I need to run my npm run watch in another window. So stop this. That, of course, runs in the background. Anytime I make changes, it will compile, tell me if there's anything wrong. And in this case, we come back to our folder. We now have a folder, and it created all this stuff for us. So we've got our bin, our live, our node modules, a test folder, and these other files here. So if we come back to our command line and we run CDK synth, what CDK synth is it is a command for the CDK, and it's seeing as we're in this folder, it's looking at what's in this particular folder, and it's determining, well, this is what the YAML file would look like for what code you have in this folder. We just ran CDK init, so we just created this blank kind of project. So what it's going to do is it's going to do not a whole lot of anything. So it's got a couple modules that it noted that we needed in there. And then, of course, it's got all these defaults out here. So nothing much going on there, but CDK synth is something you can do at any time in your project to take a look at what the YAML file would be. That YAML file is what actually gets loaded into CloudFormation. So if you're curious, that's how that works. So we go back here. First thing we're going to do is we're going to build an SQS queue. Let's go ahead and hit that construct. This is the AWS CDK documentation, and this is how, these are all the things that you can create with the AWS CDK. So pretty much anything. You've got your Elasticache, your Elastic Beanstalk, the whole 9 yards here. Let's go look at the SQS. And they tell you these are the languages that the CDK works with, so Python, Java, .NET, and TypeScript. So we'll be working in TypeScript because I am not brave enough to do Java. And you know, they tell you these are all the things that you have to do. But I'll give you a little bit of an example on how you actually wind up using it. So all that being said, let's go back here. I need my window. What is my next step? Go away. Okay, so before we can use the SQS, before we can actually use that in the folder, we have to install it. So we're going to npm install AWS CDK / AWS SQS. Run that, and get your install going. We're going to this folder in this file, hello CDK, the lib folder, hello CDK stack TS. Let's go look at that. So you have these 3 files here. This is the file that you wind up messing with. This is the TypeScript file. That's the one you're going to wind up changing the code in. See where it says right here, it gave you the, this is what you want to change. You want to put your code here. So we're going to put our SQS call here. This is where we're going to create it. But they've already said, okay, I'm going to import as CDK, the CDK core, and I've got export class hello CDK 00 stack. It just used the name of the folder that I had, stripped out the dashes there, and it extends CDK stack. So you're seeing that we've got this, it looks like code, right? You know, this is inheriting from this thing. It's going to extend the CDK stack. So we're creating a new stack. It's got a constructor. It calls the, of course, the super, and then we can put whatever we want here. Now we've run npm install for SQS, so now we can literally replace that line there, that commented line, with the SQS code. So like I said, terrible typer, so I'm going to just do it the easy way. Copy that line, put it in here. You'll notice that we got a squiggly line there where we haven't added the import at the top. So let's get that. Okay, now if we run a file, save all, and we go to our npm found no errors. Okay, good. So we're ready to go. So what we can do now, seeing as npm run watch has been running, we can do a CDK synth, and we'll see that the synth file, the YAML file, will have changed from this to something different. So let's do that. CDK synth. And we still get this stuff, but here we see hello CDK or hello Q, type AWS Q, metadata. So yeah, this is where it's actually trying to create the Q. And that is from this line here. So not necessarily all that impressive. Let's go back to our, where is our PowerPoint? And let's talk about what's going to wind up happening. Well, okay, so before we get there, CDK commands, like I said, CDK synth shows you the YAML file. You can pipe that into a file if you want and then upload it manually into CloudFormation if that's the way you want to do it. CDK diff, we'll see in a little bit here, and CDK deploy is actually what takes the file and creates the stuff in AWS like magic. So this is what the first two deploys are going to wind up looking like. We've got this top one is the first deploy. This is the hello CDK stack. We're going to create an SQSQ, and we're going to go up there. We're going to, in AWS, in the console, we're going to just put a message in there and show, yeah, this is a queue. We can put a message in there. Works fantastic. The next thing we'll do is we will have a queue up there along with a Lambda function and pumping out to CloudWatch logs. And there will be an AWS event source that ties the queue to the Lambda, excuse me. So those are going to be the first two deploys. But the first deploy is this relatively uneventful, okay, we're going to go ahead and run this queue up there. So how do we do that? Well, we already saved everything. So we're going to CDK. First thing we got to do, bootstrap. CDK bootstrap creates what I guess you would call a harness in the AWS environment. Now, this is incredibly important. This is one of the things that I lost days on when I first started doing this, the region that you're in. If you know anything about AWS, you create things in regions and you have this, what amounts to a filter up here. Like right now I'm in North California. So I'm going to be creating stuff in North California. I've got that set up on my command line. You didn't see it, but I did an AWS config on the command line here and said, these are my credentials. And by the way, I want to use US West 1, which is North California. And that, so everything's going to go to US West 1. You've got to be careful with that because, boy, if you create something in another region, it can be sometimes difficult for the CDK to see it. And you have things that never work. And that's definitely what happened to me. So in this case, we should be able to, let's see, did we finish? Did we finish? Okay, so we bootstrap, so it's CDK deploy. So now we were generating what we want to do here. It's telling you where it is. Okay, and it gives you at the end your stack ARN. So now we should be able to go back to CloudFormation in this case. I'm going to refresh, and there's my hello CDK 00 stacked. If I click on that, if I go to resources, I see there's a hello queue, which is, if I go back to my window here, that's what we called it, hello queue. Not very creative, but there you go. So hello queue is out there. And if we wanted to, let's go here and SQS. Let's pop that up. Put a message in here. Okay. And send message. Ready to be received. Okay. So yeah, it looks like we have a fully functioning queue up there. Isn't that exciting? And so that came from the line of code that we wrote there. So now that we have that, what we want to do is we want to extend it. We want to add some more stuff. Now, what we're going to do with this, let me give you a little bit of a peek forward here. This is the first deploy at the top with just the SQS. Then we have this second one here. What we're going to do with this second one is we're going to use this as a staging area, and we're going to create a construct from it. It's going to be what we're going to call a queue recorder. So you'll have a message that'll wind up, at the bottom here. You'll have a manual message that winds up going into a queue that's tied to a Lambda function. That Lambda function is going to persist that message to a DynamoDB, as well as write out to the CloudWatch logs what's going on. So we'll have a mechanism. We'll have this construct that we've created, and we can put anything. We've got manual message here on the front of it. We could put anything as a source on the front of it, and it would drop in and just fire into DynamoDB. And you'll see that we can just take this construct and just import it into a project, import it into a file, and just use it. So you don't have to, of course, recreate everything all the time. It's just like object-oriented code. And so the final punchline we wind up with looks like this, where we take the manual message and we replace it with an API Twitter feed. So all that being set up, let's go back to our project and let's go to the next step. So here's my environment variables. If you're a fast typer, those actually they aren't valid anymore, so there. Okay, so I'm explaining here, this is what's going on. This is where you go to look at this stuff, blah, 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 making sure that people understand. Because one of the things that happens when you start doing this is that, like the first time you do CDK deploy, and then you like where do you go? How do you know it worked? What do you look at? And so all of that stuff becomes important. So there's an orientation that everybody goes through when you first use the CDK. But it's pretty exciting stuff. This is why I'm doing all this stuff, to make sure that people understand, okay, go here. This is where you're supposed to look. This is how that winds up happening. So like I said, we know we want to create a Lambda function. So we're going to have to bring in the Lambda library, and we're going to have an event source as well. So I'm going to install those two packages or libraries so that I can use them in Visual Studio Code. This is what the new file winds up looking like. We still have our const queue. This is where we created the queue last time. Now we are creating a function. It's a new Lambda function. I'm going to call it hello function. Keep it in line with the naming convention there. And it's got a couple things that we add. We add a runtime. We define that as Node.js 10. The code is actually, it's in a folder called Lambda. So we're going to wind up creating a folder called Lambda in the Visual Studio solution. And we're going to put code in there that the Lambda function will actually wrap. And then we've got an index handler. And so here's where I call out. You're going to create a Lambda directory, and you're going to make an index.ts file in there. And we're just going to essentially take the event, the message in the queue, and we're going to stringify it and just drop it into the console.log. Nice and simple. All right. So let's go back to our window. And yeah, it looks good. So this, actually, let's just do this. It'll wind up being these two lines here. So we go back to our Visual Studio window after const q, const fn, and of course we are erroring out because we didn't import them. So let's go back and import those two lines. We need Lambda and we need event sources. So in the code, we're literally creating the Lambda function and we're creating the source for it and just wiring it all together. And there's another robocall. Is it Donald Trump? Blah, blah, blah. Go away. All right. So I need my folder. So if I go here, folder, no, not there. Lambda. And the reason we call it Lambda is because, like I said here, the code is in the asset Lambda, which is the folder name in that case. So we go in there and then we add a file, index.ts, and we define our code in there, which, as I had called out, was that simple stringify of the event. So exports handler. File, save all. If we go back to our npm watch, got some errors. What we got here? This is not assignable. Yeah, this is something that I'm still trying to figure out why it's throwing that error. I think it actually has something to do with, yeah, see that right there? This is another place where I lost days of my life. That right there. When you get all of these dependencies here, AWS CDK, AWS Lambda, event sources, SQS, and core, they need to be on the same package, the version, same version. So in this case, where you got two that are on a different version, that right there will cause you an immense amount of pain. So what I'm going to do, let's go with 55 here. Let's go back to our window and run npm install. Okay, we're going a little off script here, guys. So as they said in Jurassic Park, hang on to your butts. Okay, let's see what happens here. So that is installed now, and still saying it found those file errors. Well, let's see what happens when we do CDK diff. Now, if you recall, CDK diff is going to show me what it's going to do. It's going to look at the last deployment, and it's going to compare it to what this deployment is going to wind up doing. So if I'm right and the npm watch is just a red herring, this will actually show me, okay, this is going to be the difference. This is going to be the new stuff, and it should show me a Lambda function. Ah, there you go. So assume role and a Lambda and a hello function. Hello Q, there's a service role that's going to create. So it tries to call out, well, these are the differences. This is going to be the new stuff that you're going to wind up doing. And if we wanted to see this more elaborate file here, we could CDK send and see a nice long YAML file. And this is really like, you know, we got Robert on the call here. Robert knows all about YAML files. He just got a certification in YAML files, essentially. If you've never written a YAML file, it's as much fun as lighting your hair on fire and putting it out with a brick. It's just, you know, if you get one tab off, it just screws everything up and it doesn't work. So this is the brilliant part about it, is that the CDK has taken all that pain and created files that CloudFormation can just consume. Bang, right off the top. So very cool. Looking like everything's pretty good. So despite the protestations of our npm run watch, I'm going to go ahead and kick this thing off and deploy. Let's see what happens. Fingers crossed. This is one of the cool things that CDK does. So you deploy first and it just go bang, deploy, because there's nothing there and there's nothing stopping it, right? So, but now we have something out there. So before it runs, it's going to run CDK diff essentially and ask you, you sure you want to do this? Because I'm about to make some changes. We're going to say yes, and we're going to say go. You can imagine if you were working for days and days to get something set up and you were in the wrong window or in the wrong folder and you ran CDK deploy or CDK destroy, that could be disastrous, especially if you didn't save your source code. And you know, somebody at AWS did that many years ago, or it wouldn't have happened.
So even just showing this much is is already saving, like I'm looking at the time I would say messing around with CloudFormation, and like just the command line, everything is just so much better and easier to use than the CLI. The AWS CLI
Yeah.
is very disgusting, but terrible. But I think what's also nice is that like Terraform, you need to set, like really to use it properly, you have to set up the state and the Dynamo table and have everything configured and just right. And like this feels like a good balance between that if you're only doing AWS.
Yeah.
Hey, Dan, I'd like to add, I was at reInvent last year and went to a couple of presentations, but one of them was demoing this toolkit, and the guys, you couldn't keep up with them. They were flying through the screens so fast in terms of functionality. I'm serious.
Yeah, yeah, I know.
They had multiple windows open, and they were using a laptop projecting on a big screen, and there were about 200 people in the audience, and it was specifically about this toolkit. And these AWS guys, they were just smoking it. I mean, you couldn't keep up with it. So a lot of questions, if they were using it, they're eating their own dog food, they said, absolutely yes. Of course, they were using a Mac, so it was a little bit more elegant, but you know.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Everybody loves their Macs. I can't tell you how many workshops I've been in that, boy, within 5 minutes, everybody's lost. And you can tell everybody's just checking their email and stuff, and the dude is just, or the lady is just blazing forward. Yeah, it's easy to get lost, and that's one of the reasons I'm doing this the way I'm doing it. I'm trying to provide more context. I'm not spending time typing stuff and blah blah blah. I'm just trying to kind of show you back and forth. This is where it goes, and this is how it actually works.
Yeah, it's real clear. You're doing a great job. Really appreciate it. It's real clear flow.
I appreciate the feedback.
And it's nice to have problems too when you come up, for instance, with those versioning errors or the normal stuff that anybody, you know, who's not a professional doing a demo on a canned demo, right? So
yeah,
this is the kind of stuff everybody comes up to. So it's very helpful.
Oh yeah, yeah. That dang version thing. And another thing that happened to me was I got stuck in NPM hell where something got corrupted. And geez, you don't ever want to go there. I think it was literally a disk corruption, and I lost 2 weeks on that alone because you think it's other things. You don't really know what's going on. That's what's so scary about these things. So let's go to our resources on our stack here. Again, I'm in CloudFormation stacks. Here's my Hello CDK 00 stack, and here's all of my new stuff. Right, so that's pretty cool. So what we're going to do is we're going to put a message in the queue and see if it shows up in the CloudWatch logs, right? Because that's what the thing's supposed to do. It's supposed to, we put a message in a queue. We're going to manually do that from the console, and it's going, Lambda function is going to use an event source to throw that into the CloudWatch queue. JSON.stringify event, right? Dump it right into the CloudWatch log. So let's see if we can do that and see how that looks. So if I go back here to my queues, I'm going to create a send and receive messages. Now, if I recall correctly, you have to put it in double quotes for some reason. That's another one of those things I didn't know. You had to put it in double quotes. I'm not sure why, but let's see if this works. So what should happen now is it should wind up in the CloudWatch logs. And so where are my CloudWatch logs? DynamoDB table. Let's go to CloudWatch. Here's my log groups. And some of these were from previous runs. So we got here is this, you never know because they always have the timestamps differently. So one of these is going to be hello from CDK. That's us, I think. Did I do hello CDK or hello from CDK? It was one of those two.
You did from on the message.
Yeah, that's right. So it's 1807. So it's not UTC. It is CDT, and yes, that's us. Okay, so fantastic. So it works. Hey, imagine that. Let's see what happens in the next step. So let's go back again. Always context is so important. Context is so important. So now we've got this thing and it's actually working. We want to extend this a little bit, add a DynamoDB to it, a DynamoDB table, and create a construct that we can reuse later. So that's going to wind up being the next step here. So if we go back to our how to markdown, this thing keeps popping up on me here. CDK diff. Just moving before and after screenshots to show everybody that, yeah, that's the way it's supposed to look. Roles. Oh yeah, here's another one you can do. If you don't like YAML and if you like JSON, some of those people are big JSON fans, you can actually ask, I want to see it in JSON, and it'll spit out the CloudFormation file in JSON. In this case, it didn't. I'm a liar. I wonder if it's like double dash or something. You know, I bet you it's lowercase. This is one of the things I didn't test when I went through this by myself earlier. One more time. Like I said, bad typer output JSON. See if it does it. Ah, nuts. Okay, if that's the worst thing that happens in this demo, roaring success. But yeah, it'll spit out a JSON file if you figure out what the syntax is there. So let's see. One of the things I did want to point out is that you wind up with, where is it up here? Yeah, here's your service role. It's creating these service roles and it's putting inline policies on them. It is keeping everything incredibly tight. And that's so important when you're doing cloud computing and stuff. And the CDK knows that. So, you know, in a traditional shop, you'd have somebody that knows security, you'd have somebody that knows file, and you'd have somebody that knows database. And so if you wanted a server, you'd ask for a server and somebody would spin that up, and then some other person would go in and set up the permissions and all that kind of stuff. Well, the CDK knows this stuff better than anybody. So even if you had somebody that was like certified in IAM, you would still let the CDK do this for you because it knows it better. That, you know, the only thing that a person could do would be to mess it up. And the CDK keeps it nice and tight. So that's what I like about this, is the CDK is trying to empower the developer and of course do it safely. Okay, so we send it, and yeah, I probably should show that too. So if you say resources, CloudFormation, stacks, here's your stack, and where is my, where did I miss that? My dogs are going crazy. Hold on here. Check the Lambda function. We go to the Lambda function. This is the thing that's taking the message from the queue and writing it to the log. We can look at the monitoring here. And of course, when we have things going on, there's a lot of stuff populated here. But there's another way to see the log stream. It's from the Lambda function. And it takes you to CloudWatch logs. And then you can see the specific log stream for that. So, you know, I went right to the CloudWatch logs here, instead of going from the Lambda function and letting it take me to the CloudWatch log. So that's what I was saying about context and about knowing how to navigate in AWS. It just makes it so much easier if you start and kind of let it guide you. So anyway, to summarize that, I went to the Lambda function, went to monitoring, and then followed into CloudWatch logs from there. So going back to the CDK, we need to do the, mistyped it, create. We're going to do the queue recorder construct. We're going to create this. And so it changes. This is where one of the things went bad. New file in the lib folder and named it queuerecorder.ts. So let's do that. And what we're going to wind up doing here, for all you people who are being so patient, we're going to take this and we're going to encapsulate it into this queue recorder file. We're going to create a construct. We're going to create what amounts to a class. And so that's going to be pulled out. This complication here is going to be pulled out, and it's going to be hidden somewhere else. And there's going to be a DynamoDB table that's actually going to be in here as well. So all that complication is going to be hidden, and we're going to be able to use it on the front end with the Twitter API to just save things to a DynamoDB. So if we go to the lib, we need to create a new file. Order TS. I'm just going to do it the easy way and copy all this stuff in there. So to summarize and make sure that you guys understand that we're not just, copying and pasting code. This is the code that we had from the previous module. We've got queue recorder props. That's something that you have to create in order to pass it in. But you've still got your Lambda function that's still taking the code from the Lambda folder. And you've got your event source down there. And here at the bottom, you've got this table. We're creating a table. And that table, we're going to call queue recorder table. We're going to put a partition key, go away. And it's going to create it automatically for us. So that's going to be encapsulated in that queue recorder construct. Now, we know that seeing as we require DynamoDB, we need to install it, right? It's one of those things that always trips me up. We want to install DynamoDB. So where is my call for that? Well, you're going to make me type, aren't you? AWS DynamoDB. Now, we're going to install this. What are we going to do right after that? We're going to go look in that darn package.json file and verify that we didn't install the wrong version and got the libraries out, because you don't want to run into that problem. Don't want to run into that one. Okay, so DynamoDB 1.55. Fantastic. Okay, good. So the queue recorder is there. Again, we're going to create a class. We're going to extend the CDK construct and instead of CDK stack, right? So up here in this one, we're actually, the class is hello CDK stack, and we're extending the CDK.stack. Here we're extending a construct, which is not, of course, a stack. It's just going to be a component of a stack. So hit the existing file here, and we get to change this file now because of the fact that we're going to import queue recorder from this file we just created. We're going to get rid of some of the complexity in here. So let's look at this here. We've got there's our queue again, right? It's still there, but then we're going to create a queue recorder. And all of this stuff essentially is now encapsulated in this. So we've got a queue and we've got a queue recorder. So if you put something in a queue, it'll record it, save it into the DynamoDB table, nice and clean. So if we go back to our file here, this is what we have right now. We've got all these imports. We're going to be replacing a couple of these and wind up putting in the queue recorder import. This stuff, this stays. We're going to leave the queue there, and then we're going to replace this stuff here with a queue recorder class. So instead of putting the table here, we could put the table here and just kind of keep going forward, but we're going to be using this construct to save all kinds of information. You can put anything on the front of this queue recorder. We're just going to use the Twitter API, but you can put anything on front of it. So all that being said, let's go back to our file here. This is hello CDK stack. Shorter. And in lambda.tx or index.ts, we're going to make it a little bit more dramatic, right? So we're going to stringify the event like we had. We're also going to create a client for DynamoDB, and then we're going to stick the message, whatever that was in that queue, we're going to stick it into this DynamoDB table. This is very cool right here. What happens is that the CDK, you don't know what the name of the table is. And if you notice, like when you're looking at these things in CloudFormation, so it's got these crazy, we tell it, we want to call it hello Q, but it adds CC95, 3, blah, blah, blah. So it adds all this stuff on there to keep things unique, how that kind of stuff works. But we don't know what that is at compile time, and it could change every time we do CDK deploy, it could change. So this mechanism is used by the CDK to allow you to wait. You don't have to immediately say, I know what the name of the table is. You can let it define it at compile time, and it uses the process.environment in order to do that. And you see that in the CDK synth file. You see all of these things being created, but that's how it does it. So we're going to replace index.ts there. Save all. Just curious, see what npm run watch says. It still thinks it found 2 errors. What's going on here? I gotta install the AWS SDK. So forgot to do that. I'm wondering if we have a problem there. Okay, looks good. Let's go back here. Nuts, I forgot my syntax. Whoops, SD. Glad I couldn't install that because I don't know what that was. Gotta run and install our SDK. Now, why? I hear what you're asking, dear listener and watcher. Why do we need the SDK? Because the DynamoDB client needs it. So we're using the AWS SDK in this case in order to talk to DynamoDB. We can create the DynamoDB table with the CDK. We have to talk to it through the SDK. Okay. Here's where I call out, yeah, keep that stuff in line. What we have here. See what npm run watch does. Looks clean. All right, fantastic. In that case, I know what it did. In this case, I'm using code from like a previous version of it. So I've got to be careful when I'm replacing stuff. It's not hello CDK stack, it's hello CDK 00 stack. I remember making a mental note for myself and I forgot. Oh, on 0 errors. Okay, fantastic. I think we are ready to deploy. Let me double check. My Twitter stuff that's coming up here. Oh, I got some broken links. Okay, and here's our final queue recorder. Let's make sure we get that updated. And what do you think? NPM run watch looks good. We should be able to CDK deploy. But we'll do a diff just for grins. So we took a lot of that complexity, put it in its own little place. We left the queue on the front, but now we're going to use the construct in order to generate things. So we're going to destroy some roles. We're going to create some other things. So it looks good. Let's CDK deploy. Okay, yeah, it's got some shenanigans. Let's see what happens. Okay, so we're going to go to the, when it's done, we're going to go to the AWS console. We're going to send a message, and we're going to then go to DynamoDB and see if that message showed up in the table, because that's what's supposed to happen. Again, the beauty of context. We're going to manually put a message into the SQS here at the bottom, and it's going to manifest in the CloudWatch logs. We've already seen that. That's not that interesting. We want to see if it winds up in that DynamoDB table, a table that we didn't know what the name of it was when we were putting all this stuff together, but the CDK did. Usually takes a little time here. As in one of those aside things, I'm doing a safety presentation at work on Thursday on effective mask wearing. I was thinking over the weekend, I thought, why are we talking about masks so much? Why are we arguing about it? It just didn't, why is there even a question here? And so what strikes me, folks, is as you look at reality is how complex reality is. And with COVID, in a particular case with masks, I was wondering why are people even arguing about it? And when you start actually looking at it, when you're looking at what the mask is trying to do and what COVID actually is, and all of that, it just gets amazingly complex as to why we can't seem to definitively say, yes, they absolutely work, or no, they absolutely don't. And so I thought, well, shoot, what makes an effective mask? I mean, how do you wear it? How do you use that tool to keep COVID from spreading? And so that this is on my mind because I have a gym membership and I go to the gym, and it's almost comical the way that people, all of us, I mean, most people have it around their chin. You're at the gym, you're working out, and there's just people that have like the one with their nose is showing, they just have it around their mouth. And just, so I was thinking, well, if we do nothing else, we should be able to tell people, yeah, this model correct mask wearing behavior, be the change you want to be in the world, those kind of things.
Hey, Dan.
Yes.
This is a topic near and dear to my heart, and I won't weigh in whether I believe the science or not believe the science. I think it's just a simple act of consideration for one another. That's all that the mask represents. care, concern for your fellow person.
That's a strong argument. You know, it really comes down to it. I read a bunch of articles on it, and it's amazing what you wind up running into. But a proper mask wearing is a great tool in your arsenal, but it's about security, right? So ultimately, security should never be one fail point. The mask is a tool in your arsenal that has to be deployed with other things like social distancing and quarantining and all those other things that we can use to keep the affected populations safe. So all that to say, wash your hands, wear a mask, and all that kind of good stuff.
Be kind to one another.
Protect those people that need to be protected. Okay, so theoretically this is done. So like I said, we're going to create a message in the SQS queue, and we're going to see if it shows up in our DynamoDB tables. Let's go to SQS queues here. Queues. I'm going to post a message. And go to Dynamo. Dynamoy. I don't put an exclamation point. I think that was another thing that was a bad idea. Okay, so go to Dynamo. Fantastic. Now, if we go to DynamoDB, it better be there, right? So you go to DynamoDB, go to tables. Why do I not see any tables? All right, folks, let's see what happened here. There it is. So you notice what I was doing up there, folks. I was changing the region. For some reason, when I was on here, I guess I should have hit the refresh up here. What I was doing is I was hitting like backups and dashboards and coming back thinking it was refreshing. Apparently it didn't do that. So yeah, always hit your refresh button. Don't just click around. Okay, so now we've got this table. We should see a hello from Dynamo in here. And the way you find that is, you click on tables, you got your table here, and then you go to items. And here's an item, go to Dynamo. Fantastic, it works. Imagine that. All right, so all that being said, next step. What happens in the next step? Okay, so long story short, becoming a Twitter developer, getting access to the Twitter API as a developer, that was hard. I was surprised. It took like 3 or 4 weeks to get them to approve me. And they kept asking, why do you want to do this? And I kept like trying to hand wave it. It's going to be cool. I'm going to show people how cool Twitter is. And they kept like, they wanted like, what are you going to do with the data? What are you doing with it? And so I went like, 3 weeks, and finally they approved me, and I got in now. Now there's a bunch of stuff you have to do in order to get access to the Twitter API. You do that, then you got to create an app, and then you've got to create an environment, and then you got to, it's kind of complicated. So the punchline here is that I now have I'm a Twitter developer, but I'm going to use their development version, which means that I don't have access to the real-time tweets. Now I could get access to real-time tweets, do a search on real-time tweets. And that'd be really cool, because like what I could do right now is, for all you people that are on Twitter, we could say, okay, post something to hashtag Houston does DevOps. And I could then go to the thing and show you, yes, here, Twitter things showing up in our DynamoDB. But we won't do that. We'll instead use something that we know is going to show up in the dev feed, because what they do with the dev feed is they take a small portion of yesterday's tweets. And so I was sitting there thinking, well, shoot, what do I use? And this is all the steps that I did to create the Twitter stuff. And apparently I've got some missing files here. But I was thinking, well, what hashtag could I use to find? And of course that's a no-brainer. Just use Trump. There's always tweets about Trump. So we're going to use that. We're going to see what actually winds up showing up. Another thing you have to do is create a secret. So in order to get to the Twitter API, you have these 4 keys that are deployed to you. We create a secret in AWS Secret Manager, and we make sure we do it in the North California region, because if you create another one, you can't get to it. So you create the secret in there, and the the stack is going to use that secret in order to hit the API. We do that like manually outside of it because we don't do it in the actual code. But I'm just calling out that that's something that you have to do. It's a certain kind of format. You set it up. There's documentation to that effect. So here's my belated command to run the SDK. Okay. Got all that. Okay, so this is where we're going. And this is actually the last step. So what we do is, this was the original one. And what we had here originally was that, that queue that we created, the hello queue. We're replacing that with the tweet queue. This is the same thing we had in the previous call. We have a queue recorder, and we're going to feed this queue into this queue recorder. And we had, you know, hello queue here, and it was nice and short. Now we've got tweet queue that we're going to be using, and it's going to feed into the queue recorder. So we're replacing that with this other NPM module that was created specifically for this demo. It's actually out there, documented. We're not going to necessarily go too far into that, but I will show you in my PowerPoint here. This is our final step where we're going to put the Twitter queue, and it's going to talk to this construct we've already created. So back to our queue recorder. Let's bring it home. We need to npm install CDK tweet queue. Right at about an hour, so this should be just about right. We go to npm CDK. Oops, bad. So out there on npm.js.com, tweet queue for AWS CDK. So what this is doing, this particular package, it's going to use the Lambda to pull Twitter every X amount of time. It's going to have this DynamoDB table that is the checkpoint table. It's not going to be saving the tweets. It's just going to be saying that I pulled, and it's going to throw the incoming tweets into a queue. That queue is what's going to wind up feeding our queue recorder. So that's this function that we're importing in right now. With this, and it's going to feed into our queue recorder. So I assume we're installed. Good. Let's change our hello CDK stack here. And this time, I'm not going to make the mistake I made last time. I'm going to remember it's CDK 00 this time. Here we've got our query for hashtag Trump. And here we have to make one final change. This is our secret ARN. Like I had mentioned, I created a secret before we started this, and it's in this particular region. So I'm going to go get that ARN, and I'm going to put it in here. Now, do you need to redact values on ARNs? That is a personal choice. You know, it depends on how paranoid you are. ARNs have the organization ID, and you might not like anybody having that, but that's about the only thing, in my opinion, that winds up being exposed. But, you know, you've got to deal with security. So let's look at the secret manager. Get that ARN. Secret manager, again, I'm in North California. Here's my API Twitter. I need the ARN, that's right here. So I'm going to copy that, and I'm going to drop that into my secret ARN. Interval 60, 60, 60. That looks good. If I do a file save all, if I go back to npm 0, okay, we're going to CDK deploy. We're not even going to diff it. We're just going to push it out there because it'll diff it for us, right? Diffs it for us. And okay, yeah, there you go. Nice. Okay, and we're off and running. Book recommendation for any of you out there looking for a cool book to read. Surveillance Capitalism. Fantastic. Surveillance Capitalism. For anybody that thinks that what's going on in the economy is, yeah, this is the way it should be. Fascinating. And it talks about, you know, what Google, Facebook, all these companies are doing with the extraction mechanisms for data. And like one of the things we're talking about at work is contact tracing with relation to COVID, because we want to open the office again, but we want to have contact tracing in place to protect people. And of course, the first thing that people say when you talk about contact tracing is, well, I don't want to put that on my phone and, you know, somebody watching me. Oh my gosh, that we're being watched like, you know, they put the stuff like in Windows 10 and say, okay, I don't want to send my data to Microsoft. They still send the data. I mean, every single one of these, like your phone does it, every AT&T, Verizon, all the carriers do it, all the operating systems do it. They give you buttons to say, I don't want to send my data, and they still collect the data. It's basically we dare you to come get us. And every single one of these companies is doing it, because there's literally trillions of dollars to be made by predictions. It's all about predictions. So surveillance capitalism, you know, we are computer scientists. This is our job. This is something that we should be doing. This is something we should care about. And so we're going to get the world that we allow to create. So I think reading those kind of books and at least talking about this kind of things and what's the ethical thing to do, what's the right thing to do. So highly recommended, Surveillance Capitalism. So you're seeing quite a bit of activity here, trying to pull all this stuff together. If we go back to our diagram one more time, just so we know what's going on. We started out with a simple SQS We created that, deployed it, it worked. Then what we did is we added an event source, a Lambda, and a CloudWatch logs to show that we could take that message, pipe it through, and it would show up in CloudWatch logs. We thought, you know, that persistence mechanism for messages, that's a good idea. Why don't we create a construct for that, and let's save the data instead of logs, let's put it into a DynamoDB table. So we created a construct with that purpose and saved it. And we thought, well, putting manual messages in is fun. I can say hello to myself and then read it, but that's not quite as interesting. Let's see what's on Twitter and let's persist those to a table. And then who knows, you know, maybe we could take something like this and we could generate some kind of analytics on top of Trump tweets. And like no one's ever done that. But in this case, that's what we're trying to do here. We're taking what we're learning and we're just encapsulating complexity and then reusing that encapsulation. So here we're deleting an event source mapping. This stuff right here is actually pretty interesting. When things start going bad, it'll tell you, it'll get like going through here and all of a sudden something will break and it won't work. And that's what I had for months. I was getting along through here and then like it was trying to create this tweets poller and it kept breaking. It would hit the IAM permissions to try to do that. And it had some weird ARN error message and I would hit the web and I'd look at that ARN message and how people resolved it. And it wasn't going anywhere. You know, it was so obtuse. It was frustrating. And then one day I noticed, oh, package.json and those versions had gotten off, fixed it, took care of things. Okay, it's got us in suspense here. Here's my Twitter developer page. And keys and tokens. So there's my consumer keys. There's 4 things. You need the consumer keys and you need your access token and access secret keys, which I'm not going to show you because I'm mean. But yeah, you have to set up your app. You have to set up permissions. It's this whole thing with the Twitter developer thing. But very cool though. Kind of proud of that. Okay. Suspense is killing me. Okay. It's done. Let's see what's happened here. Drum roll, please. Go to stacks. Update completed at 1754, which is about right. Resources. Okay, there's my tweets. The polling timer down here is actually the thing that kicks off and says, okay, go get the tweets. So in that case, let's look at that. We might have to change when it's actually firing. Let's do that so that we can get an immediate gratification here. Every 1 minute. Update that. And if I go to my Lambda functions, tweets poller. So I want to look at that Lambda function. I want to look at the monitoring. Let's see if it fired. Go, 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 go. It's possible. What I'm trying to determine now is it broken? Watch logs. Let's see what we got here. So 647. We've got that. Info published on 91 tweets. There, this is, like I said, 647. So we know this is the recent activity. So I think what it's doing is saying, well, yeah, you're hitting it every minute, and I don't like that. So let's take off our, let's take that event back. Where did I put that? Cloud formation. Let's edit that event schedule and take us back to 1 hour so that it eventually it like kicks you out, I think, if you try to do that too often. Okay, so let's look in DynamoDB. We've got to refresh this. And there you go. There's our tweets. Real time. Leo Terrell, the Democrat, bar is a joke. How about that, folks? A Twitter feed into a construct that's saving stuff into DynamoDB, all done through CDK. Very cool.
That is pretty cool.
Okay, now, does anybody have any questions? Or anybody like to know something? Don't know if I can answer it, but I'll try.
Yeah, hello?
Yes, yes, Bruce.
So I would classify myself as an AWS beginner to intermediate. Is there some effective way to track the cost structure of the CDK? Because I can see myself or anyone kind of going crazy provisioning a bunch of architecture, infrastructure. And then, you know, I'm not an expert in tracking costs, but when I have used AWS cost tracker, it can get really granular and it's kind of hard to kind of, you know, determine. So is there like a way to just track the cost for the entire construct, or like what could be the most efficient way to do this?
Absolutely. And that's actually a good reminder that, well, now that the demo is done, I can always CDK destroy, and that will pull everything down. I mean, there's nothing left other than the persistence, and that's dirt cheap. Now, for tracking cost structures, ultimately, you're going to want to establish a good tagging mechanism. And if you do that, if you tag things correctly, and you can do that through the CDK, you can set up tagging through the CDK. If you do that, you can generate beautiful AWS bills. And one of the things you want to do is you want to tag things correctly, but you also want to set up billing alarms. Like on this particular account here, I have a billing alarm that says, okay, if I'm going to exceed this much in cost this month, I want to get an email. And I've gotten an email, and I've gone and looked, and oh yeah, I forgot I had spun something up, and I tear it down, and I'm avoiding that stuff. And this is actually, I'm going to say yes here. That's actually a great question, Bruce, because like I've heard stories of people who have done stuff in AWS, and it's running, and it's actually costing them almost nothing. And then AWS changes the way things are done behind the scenes, and all of a sudden you get a $10,000 bill. So proper tagging allows you to track and allocate money to different buckets. And the AWS billing front end is fantastic, but you do want to put those monitors on there and set up AWS config as well to make sure that you got compliance on what you're building.
Cool. Thank you.
You're welcome. It's a good question though. So here it's just going through, and it's just deleting the queues, and it's deleting the lambdas, and then it'll leave the DynamoDB. So I'll have the Trump tweets forever, as long as I want to keep them. And boy, that's exciting. Wouldn't want to lose any Trump tweets. Okay, any other questions? Well, guys, that's a CDK demo on constructs. I will put my PowerPoint out there, and I've got to talk to my boss about the GitHub repo. I'm hoping I can put the GitHub README out there, if nothing else. But I've got to talk to my boss first and make sure that that's okay. But other than that, I thank you for joining. I'm not sure what is happening next week or next month with the DevOps Meetup. If you have a topic or a presentation you'd like to present, let me know. If not, there is definitely one in September. And so we're just looking forward to continuing to instill excitement in the DevOps and the developer community in Houston. So thank you.
Thank you, Dan.
Excuse me.
Thanks, Dan. Great job.
Good.
Thank you.
Have a wonderful evening.
You too.
Dan?
Yes. Yes.
I got a quick question, because